Welcome to episode 3 of Colney Catch-Up, our new podcast series in partnership with Melp Co. Today, we are at the opposite end of the experience spectrum as I'm joined by our young star and lioness, Jessie Gale.
Hello, thanks for having me.
First of all, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. You're the first person, I think, that's actually asked me how I am, so thank you for that. As I said, we've had a bit more experience on here before with Megan Chandler and Anna Maywald, our captain and one of our vice captains, but you are at the other end of your career, just starting out. It's your first year in senior football, I believe.
Yep.
How is it going for you? How are you finding it?
No, it's definitely been a different experience from playing 21s last season, but no, I'm really enjoying it. It's different playing with people a lot older than me, more experience, played in the game much longer, but I think I've learned so much from those players, but on the pitch, but as well as off the pitch as well, learning how to be a better person and be confident and play the game.
Nice. I'm playing for like results and like competitive football as well. It's different, isn't it? Rather than, development stuff, as you said, it's like a little bit more on the line maybe on a game day.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's my first year in proper competitive football. Everything depends on promotion and winning cups and getting through to the next round and being involved in the FA Cup as well. I've only ever been in the Youth Cup, which is much different to senior FA Cup, and that's been really enjoyable experience as well.
Nice. Have you always been into football? Like, how did you get into it? Is it something you've done since you were tiny? I mean, you're only young already now, but yeah, how did you get into it?
Well, my brother and dad are massive footballers. My brother's a professional footballer, but I actually started out as a cricketer. Oh. That was my initial route that I went down, and then
What was your speciality in cricket?
I was an all-rounder.
Wait,
yeah, did it all. So yeah, I was playing cricket for quite a few years, and we'd always play football in the warm-ups.
Okay.
And I think I got to a point where I was looking forward to the football in the warm-ups more than I actually was the game of cricket. And then obviously with the influence of my dad and brother being massive football fans, it kind of led me to go for football. So I just started Sunday League and then went on trial, and then that's how I got into the academy system. But yeah, football wasn't my initially first route. Obviously I played when I was younger, but to never that big of a level.
Who's better, you or your brother?
I'd probably say my brother at the moment. Give me a few more years.
Fair enough. Who's he playing for?
He plays for Gillingham.
Nice, good stuff. Any other stories of being a kid? Like, how were you at school? Did you like school? Did you play football at school at all? Like any of your mates or?
Well, it's interesting because the first senior school I went to they didn't really play girls football. Okay. It was more cricket and things like that. So at my first school, I didn't really get the opportunity to play football. But my most recent school, they loved girls football, and that's what they were big advocates of girls football. So that's what I started doing more then. But school for me was a big struggle. I mean, I hated being in a classroom. Hated sitting in hour-long lessons. That for me just didn't work. So then having football and sport, I played a lot of hockey as well at school. So having that was a big, outlook from, how much I didn't enjoy lessons and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's fair enough. So yeah, coming back to now, you're on obviously a dual registration with Arsenal. For anyone that doesn't know, it's when sort of younger players tend to come and join up with another team outside the league of your parent club to get more experience. But with that comes a lot of balancing. You're obviously training and playing with both sides. Like, how do you find that? How does it work? And are you finding it a struggle, or are you managing okay?
So I play obviously with Watford all my games, but I also play for Arsenal and 21s in some of their games on Wednesdays, and then alongside training with Arsenal first team as well. So it can be a lot. I mean, some weeks are harder than others, especially when I've got more than one game in a week. But I think when you choose to be a footballer, those are the weeks I actually look forward to, the busy ones, the ones with the most games. The last few weeks where games have been cancelled due to ice and weather. I mean, it's been horrible. You just want to get back and play, and it's nothing worse than things being cancelled. So I think managing it all and timings, especially sometimes evening sessions can be difficult, and then when you've got to wake up in the morning for a 9 a.m. repeat, that can sometimes be hard. But I think I've developed to it, and it's definitely got easier. So.
Do you think it also helps that if something might not be growing quite as you'd hoped in one environment, that you've got another one to go into and almost like a fresh start the next day, different faces, different people, and you can kind of keep yourself going with different motivations, because obviously here you're competing for a starting place in a team on a weekend, whereas at Arsenal it's maybe looking more to the future and impressing and trying to make sure that you keep in with them as, you know, as I said, your parent club.
Yeah, no, definitely. Having more than one environment allows me to also develop in different situations.
Yeah.
Here I'm developing, I think I'm maturing, I'm becoming a better person, playing with people who've been in the game for 10, 15 years. It's more tactical, there's more... that's what I think my biggest taking away point, whereas 21s, everyone runs around, it's brilliant, like the energy and stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm getting two very different experiences, but I think it's been so good for my growth, and I've seen that through different experiences now that I've had this year with England call-ups and debuts and stuff. So I think they've definitely helped, and they work well together, actually.
Yeah, and that brings you on to my next question, actually. Like, talked about a lot of firsts for you, your first senior appearances and first goals and stuff for the club, but also your first England call-up for the 19s back in October. You've been on 2 camps now.
Yeah.
How was that for you, first and foremost, like emotionally and being called up for your country? And then how have you found the camps and that environment?
Yeah, I think initially when I got the email, like about the long list notification, I kind of phoned my parents, and it was a bit of a shock moment. And if I'm being completely honest, it wasn't something that was on my bingo card. Like, it wasn't something that I actually expected at all. So when I first got the email, I was in massive shock. Like, that was something that I didn't actually expect to happen in that moment of time. And when it did happen, I was just had this overwhelming feeling of like, oh wow, like, and then obviously when I got selected, I think you was the first person to message me, and I was just overwhelmed, and it was just a really proud moment, and felt like all the hard work I'd been putting in was being seen, which is always nice.
And since that sort of call-up, do you see yourself now feeling a little bit more pressure to get the next one, or do you just find it? Are you taking it, like, how are you dealing with that side of things, with sort of an added thing on top of everything else that you're also doing?
Yeah, it's like another thing that you want to get and achieve, and obviously Euros is coming up in the summer, and that would be my biggest thing, to get picked for the Euros. So no, there's definitely a lot of pressure. It's definitely another added pressure to how I was already feeling, but it's a good pressure. You know, I feel very privileged to be in the position that, you know, I could be getting called up for England, and that's quite an honour, and not, you know, that's something I'm very proud of. But it makes you, once you get one, it inevitably makes you want to get another one and another one and another one. And just playing for your country is quite a cool thing. Just walking out, like singing the national anthem.
Yeah, and I guess like it all sort of comes hand in hand when, if you're playing well for your club and you're training well, you know, with your country, if you're doing one thing, you're likely to get the other thing. And it kind of hopefully works out that way, that if you still do well for us and you're scoring goals, getting assists, then they're going to see that. You know, we have people at games, as you know, coming to watch, so that you'd hope that each environment can lend itself towards helping the other.
No, definitely, everything helps. Training as much as I can, playing games right now is crucial for me, so whether that means 21s or when we play on Sundays, just scoring as much, assisting, getting minutes, because there's always people watching. I think that's what I initially found hard at the beginning. Was I remember coming up to you being like, oh my God, they're here, and I felt like I'd had an awful game or something. And I think that's sometimes when the pressure gets difficult, when you feel like you need to have the best game of your life every game, and that's not always going to be the case. So I think it's just dealing with knowing they're going to be there, but also don't let that take it away from your natural game, and do things that...
Also, you've got, I mean, here alone, you've got players that have been involved in international camps. Gemma Davison's won everything you can, and then, of course, at Arsenal, particularly in that first team, you've got so many internationals there that hopefully you can bounce off and learn off and see how they cope with things when they were coming through at this same stage, which is obviously going to be a good thing for you. You touched a little bit on school and how you found it difficult to concentrate, I suppose, in class, and you've been really open with the staff and players here about an ADHD diagnosis. Do you find that football helps you with that, or is it difficult to manage within the environment? How do you cope with that sort of side of your life with football and everything else that's going on?
Well, I got my ADHD diagnosis when I was really young. I was only 9. And initially I found the diagnosis really difficult, especially in a time when I was at school, wasn't playing as much sport. I mean, I was always playing sport, but it wasn't as much of an outlook as it is now. So initially school for me was really hard, and I was embarrassed by term ADHD, and I always say to people, it's really difficult when at a young age you hear the word disorder, because the ADHD, the D, stands for disorder. So I think for me, when I was young, like 9, 10, hearing that, going, oh my God, I've got a disorder.
Yeah, you automatically think there's something wrong with you.
Yeah, my brain initially thought, oh my God, it's so negative. And then over the years, I went to schools and they didn't really accept it. They found it really hard to adjust. And then, like I said, I found a school that was really accepting of football and my ADHD. And I think with my ADHD, I found it really difficult just to be understood. Okay. I think that was my hardest thing, was people just didn't get that brains were all wired differently. Yeah. Not everyone can sit in a classroom for an hour. And I think it was then growing up, was maturing in myself, learning what I need. Yeah. And then being able to be strong enough to have conversations with my teachers, with people in positions of power, going, look, this is me, this is what I need, and this is how I need you to support me. And the older I got, the better I got at doing that. And I think that's what has inevitably helped me now to accept my ADHD. But coming back to it about football, football's helped me so much. Yeah. Because it's such a escapism to it. And also my brain's working at like 100 miles an hour. So the minute I step on a football pitch, that takes it all away. And I can just be myself and run around and forget.
But I think that's great, though, that you felt you could come here into a new environment, and you didn't know anyone, did you, before coming here?
No, not really, no.
And being able to, I think it was within the first couple of sessions, you've stood up and said, this is me, this is who I am, what I've got. And hopefully you found that the environment's been welcoming for that. But I think everyone was just really pleased that you had that bravery to stand up in the first place and not admit it or whatever, but just, this is who I am, and
exactly.
Like, can everyone just help me out and acknowledge it? And I think that's brilliant. Which leads me on to my next thing of, do you have any advice for any other young girls in particular? Because I feel, I could be wrong, but I feel like it's potentially less common for girls to be diagnosed, or not spoken about, definitely. So not necessarily young footballers, but young girls that maybe have had a diagnosis or think they might get one, how they might cope with dealing with that as you've had to do from such a young age.
I think just it's important to not let it define you. That was always something. I think it's something you accept and you go, okay, this is me. But everyone's got little quirks and things. I think just accepting it is, okay, I've got ADHD, my brain works differently to other people, so how can I work on that? And I always thought finding something that I enjoyed and that I saw was an outlook. For me, school was always a struggle, so I looked for sport and just going outside and I remember when I was 12, 13, I used to just run outside because that was my way of just exerting all my energy.
So I think you can get up and down the wing all day, every day.
But I think for younger people, if you first get a diagnosis, it's going to be a shock. Yeah. And sometimes it's not what you want to hear, but I think it helps you and it makes you unique, and I think that's something to always be proud of.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's an important message, that it's not, like you said, you focused on the disorder part of it, but try and take that negative connotation and actually use it as something to be able to understand yourself a bit better. Yeah, amazing. We talked loads about football and how much you're doing, how many different hats you're wearing all the time. It can be really all-consuming. You also moved away from home. Yeah. You know, for a lot of the week, you're not with your family home. So what sorts of things do you do away from training and games, and how important is it to have that balance?
Oh yeah, it's so important. If I didn't have like a day off sometimes, your brain just gets a little bit, you're just so football focused that sometimes you do need to take your brain away from it and remember what other things there are. Like, and I mean, I love going out for food with my friends, but another big thing is going back home. Yeah. Going to see my dog, going to see my parents, and they're so helpful in the sense of that they can just take my mind off football. Yeah. And I'll just sit at home and sit around the family dinner table and we'll just talk not about football. Yeah. Which is nice because it gives me that separation. Obviously we love football as a family and we'll probably sit and watch the football, but it's just
not your football.
It's not. Yeah. It's something different.
Yeah, I found that when I was playing, I had a group of friends that supported me in terms of, they knew I played football and they wanted me to do well, but they had no real interest in football. So it was really nice to have that group of people that weren't bothered about the result of the weekend.
Exactly.
It's then same when I had kids. My kids wanted me to win, but at the end of the day, they need me to come home and and love them.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they don't really care. So it's nice to have that
no,
balance
definitely.
and not always thinking about it, even though you might feel like it's consuming you, just to have those moments of escapism, like you said.
Or even I found like finding people around you who may be in the game, but then they have that understanding of I've created a circle where it's like, all right, no football talk, like that's it, like let's just talk about other things in life other than football. And I think it's really nice creating that balance.
Yeah, definitely. And then again, sort of don't want to rush your career at all.
Yeah.
But talking about things that aren't necessarily to do with playing and training, but have you got any thoughts about what you might do as a career option beyond playing? Obviously, I don't want you to think that I'm retiring you now at the age of 18, 19, but it's an important part for me, for young girls now in the game. Like, you're getting contracts and everything thrown at you, and it's football, but is there anything that you'd want to potentially study or look into as a post-football career option, or have you not got that far yet?
No, it's definitely, I've definitely thought about it, but for me, studying something that I've done, and I've got good grades, and I'm quite happy with where I got to in education. So for me now, I think focus is obviously football, but I love coaching. I go and coach with some of my friends who have got a really great business. Nice. So I do that as well, and that's something I'd want to go and get my coaching badges when I get a bit more time. But also, I mean, I'd love to be a commentator, because you know me, I can speak for days. I can speak for days, and I like social media, things like that. I like posting. I like working with brands, so things like that. I've got a real interest in the social side of football and that element. So that's something I've definitely been interested in.
Yeah, I think that's really key, because I don't want to end anyone's career too soon, but you can put everything into it. It only takes one moment, an injury or not getting a contract somewhere, and you just need to have that something that you might not focus on right now, but you can park it and just have an idea. But it sounds like you've got that sort of partly figured out, which is great, because I'm sure there's a lot of younger players that don't. But it's been really fun chatting to you. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Me.
And best of luck for the rest of the season.
Thanks.
Hopefully smashing a few more goals.
Hopefully.